up, everyone? Welcome to the show Built with VAs. I'm your host, Valentina Brega, and I have a special guest for you today. We always talk on this show about, different strategies, tactics, books, apps, favorite websites, how to grow your business with the help of virtual assistants, and not only. But I just realized that we haven't discussed one of the most fundamental topics that every entrepreneur needs to master. And that really underpins the success of all the companies. So I'm super excited to have Polly Mertens today, who is a very good friend of mine, who is a thought leader and an advocate for working on small, actionable steps that will take us to the next level. And those are habits. So I'm really excited about this discussion today, so we can talk more about what habits every entrepreneur needs to have, both for personal and for professional life. So Polly, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It's so good to have you here. How are you today?
I'm fabulous, Valentina, and it's great to get to be on the show. I'm a fan of the show, a fan of you as a human being, so glad to bring this topic to your audience because it is very important, as I've found in my business and in my career. So happy to share what I've learned over the years.
Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about your business, about what you do, and anything that the audience needs to know about you.
Well, I think specifically as it relates to habits, because that's the most important thing that we're going to cover today. So I do want to talk a little bit of background as well. So I am a habit and success coach. I help business owners and individuals. I do have a certification in hypnotherapy, and neuro-linguistic programming, What all that means is I know how to help people with habits. And I'd say, if you've ever heard the phrase, every master was once a disaster, I think that's true. And so how I've come to learn to master habits is because I didn't have them, or I was breaking them, or not very good at them. So we can get into that in a little bit. But over the years, I've really learned and mastered this thing called habits and teach it to people and help people with theirs, whether it's a resistance or something they want to break. So they're doing a habit that they don't like smoking or drinking or not setting boundaries or things like that. Or they want to begin creating habits. They want to get healthier. They want to get stronger. They want to get faster. They want to get better in their business, that sort of thing.
So when you said that, when you talk about your journey, when did you realize it was a habit issue? What did you try up until this point that just didn't work and then said, you know what, wait a second, it's what I'm doing that's the problem?
Well, I would say there's probably many dimensions that I could answer in that regard. I would say when you take habits to a level of extreme, we might call them an addiction, right? Where it becomes so unconscious that we actually can't not do it, if you will. And that's what happened, in my life. That's the path that I chose, if you will, or I went down. So my addiction was food. And so for 20 years, I had an addiction to food. It manifested as an eating disorder. And it took me a long time, So I would say I was doing something that I didn't consciously want to do, which oftentimes is what's happening with addicts. Consciously, we don't want to do that addiction. But at the end, we've conditioned that pattern for so long. We've created that habit, if you will, so strong and so, rooted in our subconscious that we can't help it. And so to unpack that, to disentangle myself from those habits, from those behaviors, started me on a journey of personal discovery and personal development to unwind that for myself. And so I overcame an eating disorder after 20 years. And with that, started to find that there was more to discover about myself, as there always is. And so I went on a deep, deep journey for the past 15, 20 years, personal development, which had me look back at, oftentimes I find that people who are coaches or strong at something, it's often because they overcame or they learned something that they weren't good at, and then they turned it around. So it was natural for me to be interested and be curious about, why did I do that for 20 years? What was going on there? What was keeping me from, having the life that I wanted, having the behavior that I wanted, and sticking myself with 20 years of behavior that I didn't want? And so I learned a lot from books, online courses, webinars, personal development workshops, hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment in this person, if you will, and a major overhaul. And the result is I've learned a specialty, I think, not just in habits and, success mindset and things like that, but that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's very important, something that you just mentioned, that you went through this yourself, you overcame it, and then you're showing other people how they can do it as well. I think a lot of people might look at this as, who am I to say about this? Or why me? And there's so many gurus out there who say the right things, but they don't live. They were not in that situation themselves. But when you actually talk from experience and you can see the change and you're not the same person that you were 15, 20 years ago, you completely have a new identity, a new outlook. It's just a completely new person. You speak from a point of view that makes you so much more credible to talk on this subject, which I think is very important. It's very crucial. That's, when we found out that we're going to discuss about habits today, my eyes just lit up. I was like, yeah, this is such an important topic. And not just for our personal life, but for our professional lives as well. Show me a person. Tell me your habits and I'll tell you who you are, right? Everything we are up until this point is nothing but a combination of what we do every day, the decisions we're taking, we're doing every day.
Yeah, and
right?
I want to maybe insert a definition for habits here, if I may, and kind of help that build the foundation of what we talk about. And this is Polly's philosophy. There's lots of books. You and I are both fans of the book that came out probably in the last 5 years, Atomic Habits. Excellent book. Highly recommend it. Agree with a lot of the things he said. Prior to that, when I was starting my journey on studying that, James Clear. So if you haven't read that, I think you both and I would say thumbs up to reading that. Prior to that book, who was the most pronounced expert on habits before James Clear sort of took the main stage, was a gentleman named Charles Duhigg, Duhigg, and we can share his book. It's called The Power of Habits, or The Power of Habit. And so he talks a lot about the habit loop that James Clear, I think, kind of borrowed from, if you will, but it's easy to recognize. But I want to give a little bit of a different context, because you said something really important in this, and that is like who we become is a part of this, right? So I look at habits as, I can break it down pretty, let's call it lightly or simply, and it's the promises you keep to yourself or with yourself. Ooh. So habits are the promises we have with ourselves. And with that, you get two things. You get a way of being, a person, a personality, who you are, and you get results, right? And so habits are the path, those daily actions, or repetitive, maybe they could be quarterly, but usually habits are something you're doing on the daily. And often we say habits are things that you at first have to learn, you have to memorize, you have to remind yourself. When it becomes truly a habit, I'd say then our identity has taken it on and it becomes at that subconscious level. And that's when we say like, oh, it's a habit, right? Like, oh, I have a habit of brushing my teeth before bed, or I have a habit of knowing how to tie my shoes, right? Or I have whatever these like habits are. We put it kind of, so the brain goes through a learning process in the beginning, whether it knows a little bit how to do it, or it's doing it poorly, or it's something that you're wanting to remove, right? So habits are things that you create or things that you stop doing. So you start doing or you stop doing. And so those promises, those little daily actions, I'd say are votes for who you want to be, right? Or it's the vote for the result that you want. So you're going after two things, right? So are you going after a result in your life, like a result in your business, a result in growth, or you want to learn how to dance, or whatever it is, it could be some result that you're after. Or is it a bigger, I call them little C's and big C's. So little C change or big C change. Big C change is change at the identity level. It's like, I want to be a different person. I am a public speaker. I am a business owner. I am insert, whatever you'd like. That's the identity change. And usually habits are the building blocks of that identity change.
Absolutely. I love this. So when you say that I am a business owner, what kind of habits do you think a business owner should have, or how should they identify themselves or maybe how are they not identifying themselves? What mistakes are they making that they're still struggling to maybe get their business off the ground?
Well, I think that is a topic for a long discussion. I have a feeling I have a really big answer to that. But the thing I would start with, because a lot of my training is in what we call like the mindset, right? So habits and success mindset coaching is often what I do with people. And it begins with how we language our life, or how we language who we are. So anything that you put after the words I am is forming the foundation of who you become, or who you say to yourself and to the world who you are. So I'm just going to give you a personal example, not quite business related, but I think it can translate for most people. So the identity I had for 20 years was I was a bulimic, or I have an eating disorder, right? I'm an addict, if you will. And literally in the event that helped me transform myself from 20 years before that date of having an eating disorder into not having an eating disorder for 20 years. Part of the foundation of how I broke out of that was the conditioning I had of telling myself that I was, a bulimic and an addict. And I started languaging, I am a non-bulimic. I am a recovered person, what have you. And I just want to insert something here. And I often help people who are going through that transition in identity or breaking a habit or creating, some new lasting change that they want for themselves. I call them bridge phrases because, when our subconscious, who's always listening, coming in your ears is your subconscious access into, who do you say yourself? I'm a procrastinator. I'm an addict. I'm no good at this. I'm not worthy. I'm not a public speaker. Whatever the thing is that somebody is telling themselves, subconscious goes, oh, okay, got it. We'll keep that alive. We'll keep running that over and over again. So the language sometimes that the subconscious needs to begin to build and believe a new belief, which is what a habit or an identity is, sounds like I'm becoming. I'm learning how to be a non-bulimic. I'm learning how to be a business owner. I'm learning how to be financially free, or I'm becoming financially free, or I'm on the road to something like that. So sometimes when there's a discrepancy between the two beliefs, the two identities, if it's so vast, or we've got a lot of history, 20 years in my case, of doing an addiction, the first time I said I'm non-bulimic, right? My mind was like, bullshit, excuse my language. It was like, no, I don't think so. So I could either choose in that moment to say, oh, maybe I'm not, because I had 20 years of experience of seeing that I wasn't that. But in that moment, I said, well, if I language it as I'm becoming, well, we're all becoming something, right? Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. Sometimes when you read some, a couple of phrases that you keep telling yourself, sometimes you're having a hard time believing them because, like you said, your subconscious is like, no, you're not. No, you don't do this. Like, whoa. So instead of maybe, I love what you're saying, I'm becoming, I'm learning, you're taking steps towards, and you cast a vote with little actions. So if you want to eat better, say, you would think like, okay, even if you don't identify as a person who eats better or eats right, or you'd be like, what would that person do? Or in my case, for example, I say, look, I want to be a better business owner. Who's the business owner that I admire and what do they do? And then how do I need to become to be that person? So I'm looking at the actions, I'm looking at the habits and what they do and how to become the person. And I feel like sometimes it helps me because I want to cast a vote with my actions towards becoming that person rather than feeling like I'm lying to myself. Oh, you're already there. You're the most successful person. You're the richest person. Like, that I just know this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel true. But I'm taking actions to get there. I am proactively going towards my goal. It's more empowering. And it's like, yes, I am, or something like that.
Absolutely, 100%, and that's just the story that so a belief, an underlying belief that forms the foundation of our identity, right? Who we think we are is just a stack of beliefs, some based on experience, some based on, story we tell ourselves, really, is the foundation. And if we can change that foundation, that language that we tell ourselves, some of the most powerful transformation right there. You add to that, actions, right? Like the habits, the steps. You see yourself getting to doing these things. You're going to begin to believe it. When I'm coaching my clients and, creating those daily actions, you asked me before we got on air about, what are some apps or some tools. And honestly, I don't believe in them. I don't think they're like in people's face enough. So I like very much environmental things that people can like see and interact with. The only one I would say that I use that, actually two that I use that I would encourage, and people can find their own, but I don't find that little apps on your phone often are in your face enough, if you will. Sometimes when you're creating that new muscle, that habit, I'll tell you about some other tips and tricks that we can use to get yourself to do things that maybe aren't app related. So one of the things I do like is having a visual representation in your environment, like a checklist, a board, a place you go. I find that my mind personally loves check marks. Maybe that's the female brain. It's like, check that. Yeah. Done. Yeah, it's so satisfying. We have a 2 million year old animal brain and it loves the little check marks, right? And so like if you put on your fridge or if you put on your whiteboard or you put out somewhere visually, so people are like, oh, I'll put it on my phone. I'm like, okay, I love the motion of it too. Like I go up to that whiteboard and I go check, done, or in my planner, if I have a little place where I can check that. So I think that has, for me, has been more impactful. I do think if things are time related or activity time related, set a reminder on your phone, right? So like I have little dings that go off throughout the day. Some people need more reminders. Sometimes you only need a reminder once a day. Oh, meditate. Oh, put on your shoes and go for a walk. Oh, drink water, have a snack, whatever the thing is that you're trying to, remind yourself of, because we do need those external reminders because it's not a habit yet, right? So it makes sense. I mean, it seems very simplistic, but it's like, and part of one of my keys to creating habits or breaking them is, having your environment support what you're up to, support the change that you're up to. So maybe it's an app if that works for you, but I find visual is great. I put up Post-it notes, really interrupting your day wherever it needs to be on the front home screen of your, reminding yourself, I am, what's your new mantra? Like, who are you stepping into? I'm a satisfying business owner. I'm a business owner that makes a big impact in the world, whatever.
And speaking about environment, that's an idea that I got also in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. I like what you said, but I think he also mentions the environment is people do things not because of what they are, but where they are. So like, for example, I don't remember which example he brought, but let's say you want to get into the habit of taking daily vitamins or your supplements, for example. If they are somewhere hidden far away on a shelf, you will forget about them. So instead, set up your environment in a way where it's easy to, for example, you want to take a supplement with breakfast every morning, then make sure to put it next to the place where you have breakfast or, something like that. So it's easy. You reduce the friction between you and creating this new habit, which I think is also very important because the environment that you create is probably one of the most important aspects to make the habit stick.
Yeah, the example that you were bringing up in James Clear's book, he talks about wanting to learn to play the guitar, right? And so he said, I had a guitar and I had the damn thing, right? I want to learn how to play guitar. So you kind of need to practice, right? I want to learn how to play guitar. Had the guitar in the hallway closet, not that far away, 10 steps from his couch and TV. So he'd have the habit of coming home, sitting down at the couch, turning on the television, watching hours of television, going to bed, not playing guitar. And he's like, damn, didn't play guitar today. Damn, didn't play guitar today. And he finally realized, I'm going to put a stand of the guitar right by the chair or the couch where I watch TV. Do you think his playing guitar went up? It absolutely did, right? And so what you talked about is resistance. So in habits, we look at it as adding or removing resistance, right? So we add resistance. We want to break a habit. So how can you make that thing that you used to do really impossible or really hard, or maybe it's sometimes there can be some leverage there, but like if you want to stop drinking every night, right? Or if you want to stop overeating, after, maybe eating ice cream after your dessert after dinner, things like that. It's like, okay, what can I do to introduce resistance? One thing could be not buy the ice cream. You'd have to literally get in the car, go to the store to buy the ice cream. Some people won't overcome that level of resistance to do it. For drinking, like don't have the alcohol in the house, right? So putting up resistance, like, making those promises to yourself. And the other one that you talked about is making it easier, making it smooth and like easy for the mind and the body to go, oh, vitamins are right here. Why don't I take these vitamins? How nice. Or, sometimes people don't floss after. It's like, well, just put the floss. Don't put it away in the cabinet. Like put it right next to your toothbrush. You might start flossing right after, because it's right there. It's not just a little bit out of reach. It's amazing how small changes.
Yeah. Are there any other strategies that you use that will help people create better habits?
Well, so I wanted to pass along, and there's a lot. I think James Clear has done a great job in his book, and there's lots of tips and advice out there. We talked a little bit about the little C and the big C. So when we're talking about the little C, so we're talking specifically about habits, because habits oftentimes create an identity change, but just talking about the little light habits, okay? And so the little C's that you want to make in your life. So I have 7 keys to making or breaking a habit that I wanted to introduce to you. So the first one is actually aligned with James Clear's book. Right. So one of the things he says is, as we just talked about with the story about the guitar, is make it obvious, right? Like make it obvious, make it easy, make it attractive, make it accessible, reduce the friction, those types of things. So that's number 1, is make it obvious, make it easier. Number 2, and you actually mentioned it, is tie it to another habit, right? So if you're already brushing your teeth every morning, or if you're already making a cup of coffee every morning, or if you're whatever you're doing every day. And we can liken this to business. People most often check their phone or their email every day. Okay, so what's something that, if that habit is important to you, that you can tie to something you're already doing? And people have probably 10 habits that they do in their business every day that if they just sat and examined it, they could tie it to something, right? Is it making a phone call, what have you? So tie it to another habit is one of them. That's like habit stacking, we call it. And I really want to emphasize this one because a lot of people, when I see them, trying to take on big shifts in their life or make what I think are big changes for themselves, they often go for the big leap very quickly. And so I'll give you 2 examples of that. So when I talk to people about like kind of overhauling their whole, and you and I have done a lot of real estate, so this is a great real estate example. So if you're going to remodel your entire house, you're like, man, I've got a crappy house that I'm living in. It needs everything, flooring, all these things, the bathroom, kitchen's destroyed, all this stuff. Or let's say that it's just a little bit, neglected, as sometimes our life is, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe it's not in the doldrums, but it's neglected. I often say, don't try and take on the entire house at the same time. Don't try and make over the whole house at the same time, because it's very uncomfortable for the occupants. Right? So you in your life, if we said, oh, Val, you're going to be without your kitchen for 6 months, and oh yeah, your 2 bathrooms, you're going to have to go outside and do the porta potty outside, and yeah, the flooring, you're not going to have any flooring, we're going to take out the air conditioning upstairs, it's very uncomfortable, right? But I do recommend in creating new identity and creating new habits is start with one area and build from there. So that could look like renovate the upstairs bathroom, right? Or maybe change the flooring. Start with one thing. Don't do everything at once, because often it's too much for the person to make those big shifts. Sometimes they can happen. Often that's called a retreat, right? We take ourselves out of our life for 7 days, do a major overhaul, come back different, shock everybody in our life. That can happen. And I think those are fabulous. But just trying to do that in everyday life, usually not so successful. And the other part of doing it or starting it is don't go for the biggest amount that you want. So I say start small and grow. And so one of the examples that James Clear talks about is people often, they want to get into running or they want to, do some exercise or something, but they're doing nothing right now, right? And so I want to go to the gym 5 days a week and I'm doing nothing right now. So he would say, well, get the habit of getting your gym clothes on for 5 days a week, right? Put those darn shoes on, saddle up, if you will, get the outfit on. Do that for 5 days and see if you can at least keep that time commitment to yourself, that habit to yourself. And then get in the car and drive to the gym 5 days a week. And then from there, okay, go into the gym for 5 minutes or something like that. So it's about growing. And I find, people come to me and like, I want to meditate or I want to, new body or something like that. I'm like, where can you start small and grow? And once you've got that first piece of the habit nailed, then you can grow from there. Oftentimes people try and go too big or too much change too fast. They give up and then they never start again. Okay.
Talk about New Year's resolution. We're still in January now. New Year's resolution. Why do so many resolutions fail? Because it's the beginning of the year, and now people think I'm going to turn my life upside down. Do a full 180-degree change, and they're not ready for that. And they keep the motivation going for the first week, 2 weeks, but then they just fall back to their systems. And that's actually another thing that James Clear talks about. You don't rise to your level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So if you don't have that, if you don't have it in you, all the system. So when you just mentioned, it just got me, I made this connection that's why New Year's resolutions fail. It's not about setting them. It's about small, teeny tiny things that are going to grow into you becoming the person.
For sure. And there's a couple things, I'll just hash out these last couple on my list for the 7. So get accountable. So one of the things that we find that people who take on New Year's resolutions, let's say it's go to the gym, one of the biggest turnarounds people can have in keeping that commitment is if they have a friend at the gym or they have an accountability buddy. So get some accountability. If you're committed to this, if this is a promise, we talked about habits are a promise to yourself. If this is really a promise to yourself, then you should be willing to get accountable to somebody outside of yourself, besides yourself, like tell somebody else, enroll them if support is what you need. If that looks like support, meaning like go with me, or can we sign up for this challenge together? Or, hey, family, I'm overhauling our meal plan. We're going to be eliminating sugar, or we're going to do non-dairy or something like that. Get some accountability and some support with those in your life. The next one is reinforcing the outcome, right? So, and you've probably seen this. I have a feeling you do this in your life. And that is, if you listen to any successful, highly successful performance people, top athletes, people in speaking, music industry, whatever it is, they visualize where they're going, right? They see the outcome that they want before they get there. So for example, for me, I'm training for a half Ironman right now. Never done this before. A lot of not doing it well in the beginning, if you will. But each day I think about, one of the things I remind myself is not I do have to remind myself with the training activities I'm doing that day, because I'm doing 3 different ones. I'm running, I'm biking, I'm swimming. What am I doing today? It's not just get up and go run every day. But I think about winning that medal. I think about crossing that finish line. I feel the excitement of being an Ironman and being like, holy cow, I just did that. Like, how did that happen? Well, I'm building those habits. I'm building that for that. So in each day, I'm reminding myself of the outcome, the person I want to become, the result that I want, if you will. So reinforcing it in your now, because when we lose connection to our compelling vision, our compelling future, our why, because sometimes these things that we're pursuing, if people entered college and didn't know that there was a diploma at the end, they might lose track. They might give up after 60 days, never finish. Like, it's 4 years. It seems so long, right? But they know that they want to have that diploma. They want those letters behind their name, whatever it is, however they visualize it or realize it for themselves, and walk into the rest of their life, I am this, right? So bringing that compelling future into your now each day to reinforce it. And the last one I would say, and this touches upon something that you were saying, people do a really poor job of preparation. And habits involve planning, scheduling, time, right? Putting things aside, environmental, setting up your environment. You might have to change some things in your life, schedules, agreements with people, reminders on your phone, overhaul your fridge, like get rid of all the bad, whatever it is, right? In your business, you need to hire a bookkeeper. You need to get them doing your books, if you will. You need to look at your numbers. If you want to have a business that is high functioning, what are the things? What are the little habits? You can't just say, oh, I want to be a successful entrepreneur who, makes millions of dollars or something like that, without doing those daily habits. And how will you set those things up? So it's like breaking it down, scheduling it, planning for it. Like, oh, I need to, let's take bookkeeping, for example, because that's some experience that I have is people need to keep track of their receipts. They need to document things. They need to have good accounting systems in place, if you will. That's the foundation, right? So that takes a lot of preparation, planning, putting things in place. And then the habit is every month I get a report from my bookkeeper and I review it, right? It's not so good to just have your books accounted for if you're not interpreting that information, or if you're not utilizing that information. So planning, preparation is the last key, I would say.
Oh, this is gold. This is so beautiful, so useful. I wish I could take notes here, but I'm glad I can watch this and rewatch it. This is really important. And here's the thing about habits. What you said, it sounds like there's a lot of work, which there is. But the thing is that once it becomes a habit, you don't think about it as a task. It's just so ingrained in you. Right now, I cannot go to bed at night if I haven't brushed my teeth. And it's not a chore. It doesn't matter how tired I am, or take off my makeup, right? It doesn't matter how tired I am, or if I had a long flight, it's just so ingrained in me. I have to brush my teeth and then I go to bed. Okay. So it's the same thing with habits. It's not a chore. It takes time to build it. But once you master it, once it stays with you, it becomes a part of you, which is not, it's not like, oh, it's going to take me so much time, or when do I have time to do all these habits? You have a lot of time that you're working on habits that probably you shouldn't be working on. So that's what I like about habits. It becomes a part of you.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about too, that I want to just emphasize is, it's a promise to yourself, right? So it's what result are you after? Who do you want to become, right? So you value good hygiene, good self-care. I want teeth that last a long time. If you didn't value those things, you don't need that habit, right? Mm-hmm. Habits are a choice. Some, can grow out of dysfunction, but they're often something we're choosing. We're deciding these things. So if you're pointing yourself in a direction towards a result, towards an outcome, something that you want, whether it's a change in the way you identify yourself, you start a business or what have you, or just a smaller, result. I want to run a marathon. I want to, make this amount of money in my business, if you will. The result that you're after, working it backwards. If you don't want that result and you're not willing to do those things, then you don't really want that result, right? Like, so it's a promise you have with yourself. I promise myself the steps. Some people would say rules. I think some people sometimes just see themselves as rule breakers. So I sometimes don't use that word, but that's another way. Like I remember listening to you on one of your episodes, and you tell this story about how you started with the real estate company that you were working for years ago. Is you said, I have a daily habit. I'm going to apply for 3 jobs every day. Like you were committed to the outcome of having a job, committed to that result. The habit that you needed to have, that you took on, that you made for yourself, was I'm going to apply for 3 jobs. And you scheduled it, you worked around, it was hard sometimes. Like habits can be sometimes inconvenient. Becoming a different person, making changes in your life, growing your business, having a new relationship result. It can take some work, right? But it's worth it also.
How long would you say it takes for a habit to become a habit? Is there a scientific number? Is there a magic number?
Yeah. So, how long does it take to create a habit? And people would love to tell you there's habit hacking, do it in 7 days or whatnot. When Charles Duhigg wrote his book, I think we were talking around the 21-day mark, 30 days. I've done some personal challenges over the years. In the past couple of years, I've done something called 75 Hard, which is, I'm not recommending it or whatnot, but it's a 75-day challenge with like multiple challenges within it. Did it twice last year. So in doing that, it's 75 days of this, you put yourself in this challenge from beginning to end, 75 days. I would say from my experience of doing that challenge and other challenges, minimum 60 days, often a little bit more than that. So I would say if you really want this thing in your life, put the training wheels on, do the preparation, do the planning, schedule it, all those things for 75 days. You're most likely going to be, sturdy in that. It'll be, a part of you. It'll be a part of your operations, because a lot of these habits that we're talking about are micro or macro moments that we're having to fit into our life. They're activities, right? They're things that we do. You have to see, 75 days, you get to see where do I fit this in? How am I going to fit in 5 minutes of this? Or, I've got to, 5 more minutes of meditation, or I'm going to go for a walk for 15 minutes a day. How are you going to fit that in? If you can do that for 75 days, I would say consistently, the habit is there. And then it's harder to break. Not that it's impossible to break. You can still do it, but it's harder. The one thing I do want to say as a caveat to that, and I've seen in my coaching with some of my addiction clients, is habits can be changed in a moment. You can literally overcome an addiction or change a habit in a moment if there's enough, injection of pain or injection of, strong enough outcome. So if there's a compelling reason, so I've had clients who've ended up in hospitals. That's a pretty compelling reason to stop doing that thing to yourself, right? So if you've got something in that moment, somebody leaves you, like, are you willing to do some things differently to hold on to this relationship, right? To rebuild this relationship. You lose a lot of money in your business. That could be a very big wake-up call to people. I might need to do some things differently. So it doesn't necessarily take a long time. Smaller ones, it depends. So I would say the leverage that you have on yourself can make a big difference. And, one of the things I didn't talk about here was how to get leverage. That's something that I think is valuable and important. We talked a little bit with accountability. So accountability is a form of leverage. It's that external support to get leverage on ourselves to do that. Like, I now have a commitment to someone else. I'm not willing to let them down, right? Tiny example, but this was one way that I was doing some sales or wanting to do some sales, cold calling, if you will, in my business. And I was having some trouble making those phone calls. I was like, damn, I just have some resistance to this. So I had an accountability group, and I always have women's circles accountability groups. I just think they're fantastic. Long story. We can go into that in another episode, but I committed to my accountability group. I'm going to make these calls, or I'm going to write a $100 check to the opposing political party that I don't favor. I made those phone calls. It was like, I got leverage on myself, right? And that's just one example of how it can look. So what is the leverage that we can put upon ourselves or put ourselves into that helps us sometimes with that motivation to get to do those, sometimes, the resistance and the hard things.
So the reward was Oh, I like this. You're gonna cut a check to the opposing party, not to something that it's not like a reward that you want to do it. It's something you don't want to have to happen. So that forces you, that motivates you even more to get it done. It can be I heard actually the same for you support a charity, you're gonna donate to a charity you don't like or something like that, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And that was for me. It was at the time, I think the election was going on at the time, and I was really not in favor of the person that was on the opposing party. And so I said, well, that'll get me to do it, because I don't like writing checks to people that I don't support their beliefs and things like that. And it was beautiful. I mean, I made those phone calls within like 2 days. I'm like, not going to that next meeting, having to say, and I find too many times people let themselves off the hook. They give themselves weak challenges. They give themselves weak accountability. They give themselves, massive on the excuses, right? And, Jocko Willink's book about, ownership and things like that and responsibility. So good, right? It's like ultimate responsibility. There are no excuses for not doing them. Now, I do believe in compassion for oneself, right? So I say about habits, there's generally 3 phases, and it kind of has this little whoop thing that it does. So when you're doing something for the first time, it's kind of like, with your little baby learning to walk, right? We're all walkers. We all get there at some point. But in the beginning, it's pretty clumsy, yucky. You're not walking more than you're walking, right? Mm-hmm. And then the people around you think, heavens, we have loving parents, most of us surrounding us. They encourage us. They give us time. Of course, my baby will walk. They all walk, right? We don't give ourselves that space oftentimes when we're learning a new habit. Like I'm doing this Ironman, and I'm training for this Ironman. And man, my swimming is not pretty, but I'm in the pool, I suit up, I put that bathing suit on, I just feel all awkward. I'm like, I got people in the lane next to me. They're just like gliding along like the wind. I'm like, and I'm taking a breath constantly. I'm like, man. So, and then my biking, my bike isn't quite maintained right. And I'm having to stop and I'm looking for directions. I don't have my map all sorts of things. So I say, expect it to be uncomfortable. Give yourself permission to do it poorly in the beginning, just like we do a child learning something. Like a habit is often something that is going to be uncomfortable, inconvenient. Then the middle part is often messy. Sometimes we're wavering on if we want this thing, we got to keep that leverage on ourselves, got to keep that compelling why, if you will. We get into that valley of despair, if you will. But it's messy. We can go in all sorts of directions. We sort of look back at the starting line and go, my life was so much easier when I wasn't caring about this thing that I'm doing, right? But then in the end, it's brilliant, right? And so that person we want to become, that outcome that we want is so brilliant. And when I find myself or other people that I've coached go through that valley of despair and they come out the other end and they do that thing, oh, Val, the confidence, the trust, the integrity, the inner, love and knowing that you have for yourself is so strong, right? When you get yourself to do those little hard things, you have those small wins, you build upon things, who you become in that journey, it's unremarkable to yourself oftentimes.
Mm. And I love that you mentioned the valley of despair, because I was going to say something to that effect as well. I was like, well, it sounds like the valley of despair. So basically what happens when you start a habit, you start seeing a little bit of momentum, you are motivated, and then, like you said, it gets awkward. You don't get the results. You are not as far along as you hoped you would be. So you get into this valley of despair, and that's when a lot of people quit. It's not for me. It doesn't work. How come someone else gets it and I don't? And this is where most people quit. But this is a natural part of the process. If this doesn't happen, then you're doing something wrong. That's what gets you going. That's actually why I asked about how long does it take to form a habit, because you have to go through valley of despair, because on the other end of it, that's where the progress resides. That's where you see change happening, big change happening, and it's a part of you. And that's what you said. After people get over this, that's what you help your students or the people you work with, right? It's like after they get through this valley of despair, what I just said here, the confidence, the integrity, the identity shift, that's where the magic happens. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And most times it's like, well, if I could do that, what else could I do? Right? I mean, like, and you could be some of those blessed people that like, they never hit the valley of despair. They're just like, I got this. Well, then I would say that was a small C, right? Because you can have a small C and, like, integrating, I want to drink water, drinking water, for some people, that's a big C. right? Drinking 8 glasses of water a day. That's a big C. That's a big change for them. That's harder for them. That's not part of their culture. That's not part of their environment. They didn't, whatever. They weren't raised like that. Whatever the excuse is, if you will. So that might be a big C for them and a little C for someone else. Like, oh yeah, of course I can drink 8 ounces of water. But maybe you're drinking 4 glasses a day already, and that's just, I mean, doubling it, that's quite a bit, but still. So give yourself compassion. I mean, I really liken the learning how to walk metaphor to habits, right? So if this is something new for you, which most times this is a new behavior, this is a new procedure, this is a new process, this is a new way of being. And I mean, we're talking a lot at the tactical level, but sometimes these things, like I was just on a podcast and I was talking about boundaries, right? And so, you know, speaking your boundaries is it can be a habit or not a habit, right? So these things can show up, the habits of personality traits, the habits of physical aptitude, habits of, you know, behavior, things like that. So just know that it shows up in a lot of areas of your life, and where in the examined life are you finding that either you're not getting the result that you want, or you're not the person that you know that you can be. And that's usually a good place to examine and say, you know, what is it I'm not doing? What is it that if I started doing that? And, you know, if we liken this for our entrepreneurs, you know, in my background with all the finance and the bookkeeping and things like that we help people get results from and get their finances in order. You know, people often have a lot of shame around not taking care of their books, not knowing if they're making money, not knowing finance, right? Like, finance and Wall Street and all these people, they do a really good job of creating unique language, and then they throw it around, and that's like this barrier to entry. Like, well, you don't know the words, like profit and loss, revenue statement, cash flow. You know, they throw these words around, and it really intimidates people who didn't grow up with that, right? And so, you know, I've gone and gotten an MBA, and so I understand. And literally, one of my teachers said, this is just financial literacy. Those in the power that be try and use lots of words around these things to confuse, you know, the common man or the common woman, if you will. Don't let it get in your way. Just learn it, and then you'll be much more empowered with it, right? I think habits, adding or subtracting, empower us, or they disempower us, right? And so I find with people who get good financial habits, they feel more empowered in their business. They like really have their hands on the wheel. They know what they're doing, and their books are in order. They know if they're making money. I can't tell you how many people that come and they don't have good bookkeeping. They're not keeping track of things. Taxes are maybe done, not done, or they're like people literally own millions of dollars in real estate and they've never seen their P&L for years. I am not kidding. And first it shocked me, and now it just makes me sad, because it's such a solvable thing. And some of it is the shame that they have. Some of it they busy themselves with, because like you said at the top of this call, like a lot of people look for those strategies to negotiate better, look at deals better, get better contracts, get better financing, raise money, build their team, whatever. And usually like what's on the end of that they don't look at is their finances, because it's something that they've never learned, or maybe there's some shame about it in their family or their history or whatever it is. And I'm like, bring that up, get those muscles strong, take a look, financial literacy and accounting it's a smaller hurdle than people think it is. The big picture accounting, like understanding, what the CPAs do and things like that, you don't need to know that. You can learn some simple habits, some simple steps to get there, to have you be a financially literate business owner that will take you leaps and beyond, the average business owner. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. Sorry, I got on my soapbox there about that.
No, I love this. I think this is so important. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to this show. So I saw myself in a couple of things that you mentioned as well. So I think this is not uncommon for anyone out there. So this is very important. Now, my question is, I know how important it is working on habits, but how many habits should we work on at a time? Is there a number? Is there, what would you recommend? Because we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, right?
Yeah. Liken it back to the story I told about remodeling the whole house, right? Mm-hmm. I would say if you have a whole house remodel that you need to do, you probably need to take yourself out of your life and go do that work if you want to see results quickly, right? So if you've got a relationship that's on the rocks, if you've got, exhaustion, a medical diagnoses that's, like, hey, if you don't do something, or a really bad diagnosis, boom, you've got cancer, whatever it is. People usually only take the intervention when it's loud and it's, repetitive. So if it's at that level, oftentimes it's like, take yourself out of your life, go do some deep work. People need to heal their bodies, heal their relationships, whatever it is. But if you come to little C's, little changes, I find, like, don't take on too many. If I was coaching clients on, let's say it was a physical challenge or a physical overhaul that they wanted to take on in their life, like I said, start small, because habits oftentimes are a time commitment, right? It's a promise to yourself of an activity or an action. So, granted, people often lie to themselves about how much time they have. We're great at watching a lot of television and fiddling away at social media or whatever it is. So we probably can, if you really had to, if someone put a gun to your head and said, you have to learn this thing, or you have to eat healthy, or whatever it is, you would probably get it done, right? So, but just know that it's going to take some time. So prepare, plan, and schedule it, and start small, right? Like, so take on one, like we talked about, depends on, like, the level of that C that it is for that person. If it's a big C change, they got a lot of resistance to it, they have no experience around it, it's going to be very uncomfortable, it's going to take a lot of time, it might cost a lot of money, those types of things. Do that, just that one. Like, that might be your one, right? If it's a small C, like, I just need to sip some more water at the computer every day. Okay, you can maybe do that and, take vitamins in the morning. Okay, those can probably be done. It depends on that person, that individual's right relationship to that C. What is that going to mean for them?
Yeah, and I like that you said start small, and that's probably one of my favorite examples from the book Atomic Habits, and that's actually why it's called Atomic, because they're so small. But he talks about this example with 1 degree, and you said it's over time consistency. So, and I think the example he says is if a plane flies from Seattle to New York, if the plane just flies 1 degree in a different direction, just one small teeny tiny degree, but because of all this distance, because of all this consistency, they're going to end up not in New York, but in Washington, D.C., for example. It's just 1 teeny tiny degree. And what's 1 degree for this huge, big plane? But it shows you, and that's kind of what you said, it's not so much about what you do, it's how often you do it. So it can be small, it can be minuscule, but over time it compounds and it adds more and more and more to it. So you end up in a completely different place, whether it's a good habit, which can get you in a better place, or if it's a bad habit, because that's going to get you in a
place in a port you don't want to be visiting. Yeah. How I often translate that for my clients is like a cruise ship, right? So your life is like cruising down, like all the inhabitants of all the behaviors, all the things that you've got is like your big cruise ship cruising down the ocean. It's kind of hard for a cruise ship to take a sharp right turn, right? It doesn't just go, and take a right turn. Right. People may want a right turn in their life. They may want drastic, dramatic, overnight, instant success. But you're in a cruise ship. And if you kind of look at your life as you're the captain of that cruise ship, sure, you can, that 1 degree, you're absolutely right. The faster you turn that depends on how committed you are to this habit. How can you slow down some other things that you're already doing and make space for it? Do you have some support, some guidance, some bumper boats maybe along the way helping you make that turn? Just knowing that it's not, flying a plane, you could say, oh, you could go up, down, like a speed jet or something. But I liken our life a lot to the destination we're going is like a cruise ship and we're cruising along. Cruise ships don't often take sharp right turns. Take a little bit of time, but once they go, they can make a big shift. Like you said, you leave New York Harbor. If you're heading for Amsterdam, that's one direction. Or if you're heading for, South America, it's going to eventually, you'll get there. But don't expect to turn on a dime for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Do you also work with entrepreneurs that you coach?
Yes, absolutely. Success coaching in business and in personal. And, one of the things we didn't touch upon is, I have a background. Part of one of the things that I started helping people with and why you hear so much in how I help people work on themselves is because I coached and taught entrepreneurship for a number of years. And I helped people starting their own businesses, how to write a business plan, things like that. And as I found year after year of coaching people and teaching people is people would get different results based upon who they were and how they saw the world. And I was like, why can you teach, and I've come a long way, and I've learned a lot from great leaders like, for example, Tony Robbins. And he says, success in business is 20% strategies and 80% mindset, right? And so it's the mindset, the work that we have, the who we are, the captain of that ship behind the scenes, the personal, the habits, what we're doing in the background. That's guiding our ship more than the little strategies or the little tips or the things. Sure, those are all important. You can't, have a successful business without knowing how to negotiate, write contracts, sell how, all these things. But more so, people would spend time on themselves. I think they would have a bigger impact, a bigger shift in that direction of their cruise ship if they work on themselves as well.
Yeah, and you also attract a different caliber of people if you're working on yourself. And that if you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, that means you don't tolerate some of the things that maybe you used to before. You attract better teammates, you attract better coworkers, you attract a stronger team. And what got you here won't get you there, right? So if you want to get to the next level, change the way you are. And that's I think you're naturally going to attract the right people. Did you ever notice that?
Absolutely. You become, the average of the people that you spend time with. One of the things that I was thinking about and I was preparing for us to talk today is, it was like, if we talk a lot about business, and I coach people in a lot of different realms in business, one of the things I find is somebody and I'll just say my top value in life is health and vitality, right? I put that above everything, or below everything is built upon that, whichever. It's the foundation of my life. And I have seen people who put health in the wrong order. They put success or money or whatever, fame before health. And, there's an old fable. It's one who has their health has a million dreams, and one who doesn't have their health has but one dream, right?
I heard that from you. I heard that from you, and it just struck me like thunder. Like, this is so powerful, and it's big. Can you say that again, just for our audience one more time, please?
I'll say it one more time, and then I want to share another belief that I have behind that. So, one who has their health has a million dreams. One who doesn't have their health has but one dream, right? They just want to be healthy, right? And so, if you have your health or if you don't have your health, I would say, one of the things that it's amazing how much sports and athleticism and being involved in my physical well-being has translated into, being a better leader, being a better business owner, being a better coach, if you will. And so while they seem like they're separate, sometimes I think if people would work on their physical health, it's amazing the transformation they would see in their business. It naturally isn't like, you can't have clarity of mind, health and strong body and agility and feel good. And, you accomplish those burpees or the running or whatever it is. You just have this sense about yourself, and then you go into your business and you're like, look out, business, right? Or if you have poor health, or if you're not taking care of yourself, you're tired, you're exhausted, you're overrun, run down, all these things. It's like trying to take on this mountain called my business. It feels bigger than me, right? And so I like to see people, if they're not taking good care of their health and their business is, floundering, doing well, whatever it is, it's like, if that human isn't doing okay, if their well-being, mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, isn't in good order, then I have a feeling there's going to be some holes and cracks in this business that's eventually, either, if it's not already, leaks are coming through the wall or the foundation, they're going to show up at some point. So take care of your health. If you're not already seeing your health as your foundation or your primary responsibility to yourself, and I think to your teammates, to your clients, that sort of thing, I just want to suggest that people consider that. That is my belief. Try it on, see if it works. But I find that people that go after big goals, they transform their bodies, there's almost always a transformation in the results they get in their business.
I love this. When you coach people, how do you diagnose what habits they have that got them where they are? Or how do you understand what they need to stop doing or what they need to do more of? Do you ask them questions, or do you have a process in place? How do you do that?
There's a lot. The coaching I do is often very dynamic, but the way that I want to answer that is people often come to me with a pain. They come because they're not getting the result that they would like. They're not doing the things that they want to do. They're not, they don't feel good. Something is not at ease in their life, right? Like if we're looking at a balance or a scale, the scale's gone down and they're losing. They're not feeling their power. They're upset at themselves or ashamed of something. They're not getting the results that they want in their business, their relationship. So the first step is to get clear, right? Oftentimes people seek out a coach, come to a coach like myself, because they already are aware there's a problem. Like they're already either days, months, years, they've known this. Like I have a gentleman who I'm starting to coach right now. Almost 14 years he's been aware that he's had this problem, and he's done a little bit, but the pain is getting so loud in his relationship that he's now willing to do something, right? So oftentimes there's a pain, so we just talk about that pain, right? And I'm very good. One of the things that I have trained myself in the coaching and world and the certifications that I've had is listening for beliefs underneath what people say. So there's, if you go into a doctor, good doctor, and not all doctors, but they listen, they say in psychology, they say people present with something, right? I would call that the superficial symptoms. Okay, so I've got redness on my back, or I've got a sniffle in my nose, or I've got a cough or something, whatever, or my wife wants to sleep in different bedrooms, whatever, like there's this superficial symptom. Okay. And then underneath it, there's a lot there. So I'm often listening to what's the root cause, what's beneath that. And I hear that through story, through languaging, through behavior, through, what are they doing? Like what's beneath that? And that's my job oftentimes. But I'm working with them through asking questions to help them at the same time see it, right? So I'm saying, well, so what do you think causes that? Or where did that come from? Or how long ago did you start doing that? Or when do you first remember that appearing in your life? Or, or if you weren't doing that, what would you be? So there's ways that we can kind of diagnose. And sometimes it's very clear, very obvious to the person who comes in, oh, I'm this and it's because of that. But sometimes we have no idea, or somebody thinks it's one thing, but I would say maybe that's the first level down. But if we as coaches do our job and digging deep enough, we can help people get to the root. Unfortunately, and I think any great coach that has done this for a while, people come in with a need. And we as coaches, we help them with that need. They have a want. They want this result, but oftentimes they need something else, right? And whether or not they're willing to admit that to themselves, the real change or the real growth or the real opportunity that exists for them to be their potential, have the best life, get the results that they're after, it's not by them pursuing what they think they want. It's often helping them embrace and make peace with and find their way to make the change in what they need to change.
Wow,
Hope that
this is
answers your
amazing.
question.
I love it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're doing is not easy in terms of educating people the need for coaching. Because here's why. We live in a world right now where there's instant gratification. Why would I go through years or so much time working with a coach when I can try this magic diet or this magic thing and lose weight in 7 days? Or, we see this just 7 days. Only it makes it look so simple. And then maybe this gentleman that you talked about, he's been having this pain for years. I'm sure he maybe tried some easy solutions. But it doesn't work. That's why I think maybe when people come to, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when people come to you, it's after they have tried, after they've been lured into this super easy, that something that looks easy and it just doesn't work. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Because there's lots of things we can change about ourselves. You can start to exercise or get healthy or have boundaries or look at your financials. These are not things that you need a coach for. It's you need a coach when you find that you can't do it yourself. Right? So something you've tried, you haven't gotten the results that you're after, or I liken it too. So I'm a huge fan of bringing in coaches that shorten my trajectory. So it's like, oh, I don't want to have to do this whole thing and in 5 years I'll have that. Man, if this coach could get me there in 6 months, a year, depending on the thing that we're talking about. Like I've coached people in how to run Spartan races because I became, elite Spartan racer. It was like, they didn't want to have to learn it the hard way. Go to 5 of them and try this and watch videos. And it's like, come take my course. I will have you running a Spartan race and boom, you will crush it the first time, right? Like you can get your result faster. So 2 ends of that same question, I guess, is like the pain is big enough or the juicy outcome that they want it bad enough and faster, then I can help them.
Absolutely love it. So how do people find you? I'm interested. How do people find you? How do they get in touch with you?
Let's sign up now. Yeah. Well, I love being on your podcast, and I'm a huge fan and follower. And so I do have a new podcast that I've launched with a co-host. It's called the Everyday Awesome Project. So you can find us at everydayawesomeproject.com. I also have my primary and the longstanding business coaching, which is polymertens.com. And we can spell that in the show notes or whatever, but polymertens.com.
I'll make sure we include that. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So
awesome.
happy to support, and anybody has questions. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will make sure to include all of these links. And if you have anything else that, any other links that you want me to include, just let me know. But Polly, it's been such an amazing and just such an easy and natural and very good conversation. And it's so very needed. It's, I just, I'm always the type of person who's like, I'm going to give more value to people. But this conversation is like, you cannot have that value if you don't talk about the fundamentals first. If you don't set the right foundation for your house, you're not going to have a house that's going to withstand big winds and hurricanes and whatnot, right? So you need to have that solid, good foundation. And I think it all starts from us. So that's why I like this discussion that we had today. It's so important, whether you're an entrepreneur, so whether you're looking to have a success in your professional or personal life, it doesn't matter. It's all life. It's who you are as a person, and these habits, these traits carry you through all the journeys of life that you have in your personal life, in your professional life, in your relationship, with your spouse or with kids and with your friends and so on. So this is a big life lesson, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and I hope it's helped people in some areas of their life or multiple areas of their life. And anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm an open book, open door, happy to support anyone that wants to follow up. Thank you, Val, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Polly, so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please make sure to check the show notes. Make sure you check the description, how you can get in touch with Polly. She's a great friend of mine. I highly recommend her. She's a well of wisdom, and she has this natural desire to help people. And I'm very, very happy to make you acquaintance with her. So thank you so much, Polly. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.